Hi, I'm Savarasa, a PhD student at the Computer Science and Engineering Department at University at Buffalo. And today I'm going to present my paper, EDU-AP Elementary Discourse Unit-Based Argument Parser at SigDial 2022. This is co-written by myself, Souvik Das, and Rohini Srihari. So in this paper, we present an argument parser. So first, let's look at some basics of argumentation. An argument generally constitutes a claim, which is the major or the controversial statements in a sentence, and premises which kind of support or attack the claim. So they kind of provide evidence to the claim. So as an example, if the sentence is biking is good because it improves the cardiovascular system, biking is good can be the claim, and it improves the cardiovascular system can be an evidence evidence to the fact that biking is good or to the claim that biking is good. And argumentation mining it constitutes analyzing and finding these kind of structures from text. So argumentation mining constitutes of four subtasks: text segmentation, which is identifying these discourse units or the argumentative discourse units; component classification. So once we have the discourse units, we want to classify it as claim or premises, measure or major claim; relation detection. Now, once we have identified all these argumentative discourse units, we want to establish or we want to find out if two argumentative units are related or not. So that's relation detection and relation classification. So once we know that two argumentative units are related, we want to determine what kind of relationship exists between them. Is it a support? Is it an attack? What's the nature of the relationship? So once we have all these components, once all these subtasks are performed, then we can create something known as argumentation graph, which is basically a graphical representation of the arguments in a discourse. So the method that we proposed is a dependency parsing based method, and dependency based parsing method for argumentation mining is not something new, but what we bring to the table is, instead of operating at a token level, we operate at an EDU level or elementary discourse unit level. And what this does is it basically minimizes the chances of error that occurs by operating at a token level, because operating at tokens is more granular than operating at EDU. And we propose an end-to-end argument parser that exploits the relationship between EDUs and EDUs, as well as we work in a multitask learning framework. We also introduce a novel loss function, or novel objective function during training, which helps in achieving better recall scores. So this is the dependency representation that we formulate. So if you look at the right-hand side, so let's say the example is biking is good because it reduces stress and releases endorphins. So biking is good is an EDU or argumentative discourse unit. It reduces stress and releases endorphin is another EDU. And the EDUs in this sentence is biking is good because that's the first EDU. Second EDU is it reduces stress, and third is and releases endorphins. So the rules of the dependency representation is that an EDU can either fully or partially overlap with an EDU. Each EDU can only belong to a major claim, premise, or a non-argument. And if there are consecutive EDUs that belong to the same EDU, then they are all connected using the append relationship. So over here, EDU 2 and 3, it constitutes EDU 2. So EDU 2 and 3 is connected using this append relationship. Claims and premises are related using the support or attack relationship. So over here, this is the claim and this is the premise. So they are related using the support relationship. And a pseudo token root is added to the starting of each argument, which acts like the root of the entire sentence. And from the root connects to the claim, and it can have a for or against relationship with the claim. And if there are any major claims in the sentence, then the root connects to the major claim, and the major claim in turn points to the claim. So this is our proposed method in order to solve the dependency-based representation. So what we do is, as an input to the model, so this is a model on the right-hand side, we pass the current text or the current paragraph in context. So we add the root token to the starting of the paragraph, and we add the special EDU token to the starting of each EDU. Along with the current text, we also experiment with passing the prompt of the essay or the prompt of the discourse as input, along with all the left-hand side context or all the left-hand side paragraphs that came prior to the current context, as well as all the right-hand side paragraph that comes after the current context. So we pass all of this through a shared transformer encoder. There is a pre-trained transformer encoder. It generates a representation, and so we only persist the representation of the special tokens. So the special tokens, they act as the representative for the entire text. So once we have the representative tokens, we perform multi-headed attention, and then we only persist the special tokens from the current context. And now this passes through this biaffine layer, which performs the task 3 and task 4, which is detecting if there is a relationship between each of these special tokens or between each of the EDU components, and the relationship classification, which determines the label of the relationship. So for text segmentation, we'd operate using the encoded representation at this layer. And for component classification, we operate at the encoded representation of this layer. So in this way, we formulate or we process this end-to-end architecture, where at each layer we perform one of the subtasks of argumentation mining. And along with this architecture, we also introduce this delta penalty, this special loss function. So we add this special delta penalty to the loss function, to the binary cross entropy loss function for relation detection. So what this loss function does is, suppose there is a scenario where a relationship is supposed to exist between two nodes from A to B. So we should only predict that relationship should exist from A to B and not the other way around, right? So this penalty does it penalizes if both the relationships are predicted to exist, or if none of the relationships are predicted to exist. So what that does is it inherently increases the recall of the entire system. So we experiment with the persuasive essays corpus by Stab and Griovit 2017. As an external baseline for comparison, we compare against the BiPAM parser by Ye and Teufel in 2021, and theirs is also a dependency-based parser, but they operate at tokens and we operate at EDUs. We also use a validate against an internal baseline, which is a vanilla version of our EDU-AP parser, which is devoid of the delta penalty. For evaluation, we compute F1 score, and we also perform the F1 score both at the level of approximate as well as exact overlap. So by approximate overlap, what we mean is if given an entire sentence or an EDU or an EDU, if 50% of the tokens match with the golden text, then we say it's an approximate overlap. If more than 50, if entire text matches with the golden text, then we say it's an exact overlap. We also perform ablation study to understand how does the change in the context affect the results, and how does the delta penalty affect the results. So these are the results that we obtain. So first, for task 1 and 2, for identifying the EDUs and classifying the EDUs as major claim, premise, and non-argument, we see that we consistently perform better. Our vanilla version consistently performs better compared to BiPAM. And we achieve best results when we add the delta penalty along with incorporating the prompt along with the context. So an interesting thing to note in all the results is that just adding the prompt outperforms adding all the context that's available. So adding the prompt along with the delta penalty almost always gives us the best result for all the subtasks. For subtasks 2 and 3, for subtasks 3 and 4, we again see that the EDU-AP parser, it works much better than the BiPAM parser. And when we incorporate the delta penalty along with the prompt, we get much higher results. And we split this relation in detection results. We show the precision and recall. So what we see here, when we add the delta penalty over here, we see we observe an increase in recall as well as a precision. So delta penalty works the way that it's supposed to, and it increases the recall of the system. So this is an example of a parsed output, so which is by our EDU-AP parser compared to the BiPAM parser. If you look at the output, you will see that our parser not only generates the correct parsing, not only generates the correct parse, it is less segmented. If you look at the output here, you see the output is very much segmented, and it sometimes doesn't make sense. So for example, over here, cause they is predicted to be one of the segmented EDUs, or one of the segmented spans arguments, and it doesn't make any sense by itself. Whereas over here, since we operate at an EDU level and not at a token level, our parsed output is more sensible. So in conclusion, we present EDU-AP, an end-to-end argument parser, which is a dependency-based argument parser for parsing arguments from monologues. EDU-AP is trained end-to-end in a multitask learning framework by minimizing a novel loss function, and it exploits the relationship that exists between EDUs and EDUs, along with the appropriate use of context using a hierarchical encoding scheme. And we achieve superior experimental results, and we show via ablation studies the efficacy of our models. Thank you so much.